I'm Ellie and welcome to the channel. And as we delve into this journey that is art, today I'm going to be trying out acrylic paints. Now I have messed around with acrylics very softly, very vaguely here and there, but I really have no idea how they function, how they work, aside from what I've seen online. For the practice painting, I'm going with cherries because I'm familiar with cherries. And to transfer it onto the other paper, I'm trying out this method. So right off the bat, I'm wondering if the graphite will shine through the paint once I've laid down the background color. I'm thinking a blue background, so a little bit of research on TikTok showed me that some people use a complementary color to the paint you're using, and that will help your initial sketch shine through. So I'm gonna try that. Obviously, I have no clue what I'm doing and I wasn't sure if this was going to work, but it actually worked pretty well and I will remember this technique going forward. Again, I obviously have no clue what I'm doing, but I had a semi-abstract background vision in mind, where the light blue would meet the dark blue, but it just didn't work that way. So in the end, I improvised and went very dark on the edges and blended it out with the blue. Alright, some things are going horribly wrong and I think it's because it needs to dry. The good news is the initial sketch is shining through, so the complementary orange seems to have done the trick. However, this paint isn't very opaque. It is somewhat translucent, so I'm wondering if just the graphite would have worked. But rather safe than sorry. As this process progressed, I realized that the complementary color did in fact make a difference. Jumping into those cherries, I didn't feel like they popped on top of that dark blue background. I thought maybe subsequent layers would help, but it really didn't, so I put down a layer of white gouache to lighten it all up a bit. I had no clue if it was going to work or make the whole thing worse. But it worked pretty well and helped a little bit with reactivation in the acrylic paint. Then I outlined the whole thing with white acrylic marker and I couldn't be happier with the turnout. Surprisingly, I did not expect it to go that well. I did a lot for my confidence, but this was the after effect. There was paint everywhere. More than moderately happy with the outcome of the practice painting, I was more than confident going forward with the main painting of this video. To transfer the drawing onto the paper I was going to be painting on, rinse and repeat. Again, I had a distinct abstract background in mind that involved light green, light blue, and a bit of brown, maybe even a bit of black. I wouldn't say that the goal was achieved, but it was good enough. Also, I would like to mention that I have no white acrylic paint, hence why I actually use the white gouache on the cherries. So wherever I want to lighten things up, I need to use the lightest shades of those colors and work very cautiously. Because although the gouache saved the day, whenever the gouache does work out well, I consider myself lucky. Just because it worked that time doesn't mean it will work this time. I can certainly try, but there's no guarantee it will yield the same results. And here we are, already moving on to the cat. I was just putting down some yellow just to lighten it up a little bit because again, I don't have white. And if you look closely, a little bit of that light blue and brown shines through in the background, but as it dried, it wasn't blatantly obvious. Enough though for me to leave it alone. In spite of all of that, I felt that the yellow wasn't doing the job I wanted it to do, though looking at this now, I'm not sure what that was, and felt the need to cover the whole thing in, you guessed it, white gouache. I think it's because I wanted that reactivation quality that it created with the cherries when I put the acrylic paint down. But like I said, the gouache doesn't always do what I want it to do. Because though it worked so well on the cherries, it did not behave the same way on the cat. And here I was still very optimistic and hopeful that this is going to go well. My evidence, the cherries. The black acrylic paint I have also created a bit of confusion. It says acrylic paint on the bottle, and in fine print at the top it says watercolor. So on the cherries, the black had somewhat of a reactivation ability. Whether it was because of the white gouache or the black watercolor acrylic paint was a very big uncertain gray area I absolutely intended on replicating on the cat. but it just did not translate the same. Also, while there was only one small area on the cherries that I worked on pretty much immediately after putting down the black paint, I went ahead and did this. Put down the black paint in all the areas I intended on shading, thinking it would reactivate and I could blend, just like I did the cherries. It didn't, and this was me trying to improvise because of that. How exactly am I improvising, you might be wondering? Well, by putting down more paint, of course, and more, and more, and more, until it was, well, this. At this point, while I was keeping my cool, I was in fact in full-blown panic mode. And did what? You guessed it, gouache the face. Because, let's face it, nothing drives progress forward like doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result, right? Looking back now, in a clear and calm mind, what I should have done is put down my black watercolor acrylic paint first, before putting down the acrylic paint. Of course, there's no guarantee that that would have worked either, but at least I would have been trying something different. So, it's the next day. And, well, this is not going so well. There are elements of acrylic painting that is easy for me, but there are elements of it that is not so easy. As it is right now, I think I've overdone it. I don't know how many layers of paint is on this cat's face, but I'm going to leave well enough alone. Sometimes you need to quit while you're ahead. I'm going to do a few little finishing touches and call it done. Just look at that texture. Hopefully next time Einstein's wise words will haunt me before the editing process and while I'm actually busy with the artwork. I am moving gracefully forward, but I'm not going to pretend like the lightness of those ears compared to the rest of the cat isn't bothering me. It was all I could see and absolutely nothing else. So there's just one thing for it. Lighten up the face a little bit, but thankfully this time I didn't resort to the gouache. Definitely looking a little bit better. I was happy that the face could at least partially match the ears, but I was very disappointed that I lost that blend that I really wanted. A big identifying factor in my art style is the way I blend. It's a technique I have only successfully achieved with graphite and coloring pencils. Because the background dried darker than I hoped, I again took the white acrylic marker and outlined it just to let it pop a little bit off the page. Let me just say, while I have not been the biggest fan of this white acrylic marker, just because on top of watercolor and coloring pencils, it lifts up the pigment. But on top of the acrylic paint, it worked like absolute magic. It worked so well and so smooth. And should I try acrylic paint again, and I will because I actually really enjoyed it in spite of the mess ups, I will incorporate the white marker again. I really like how it works and I like how it looks. And here is the final result. In spite of the setbacks, the shortcomings, the mishaps, I am happy with the end result of both of these paintings. Not bad for a first real try. And that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching.